This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the February 14th Technical Advisory Committee meeting. Time is 9:34, and I'll call this meeting to order. Normally, Ryan is here, but he has a training today, so he's just trying to avoid PAC. He wanted me to let you know. It's not you guys. He actually won't be here next month either, or he'll be in DC for another training, so. If you come to policy board next week, you can see him. He'll be here then. Item number 2 on our agenda is opportunity for public comment. Anyone has public comment they want to give, or if there's anyone online, Anita?
We have 10 individuals online, but no one has expressed an interest in commenting.
We'll move on to item number 3, which is a staff update. As you can see on the screen here, we have upcoming meetings. I'll note there's a bicycle pedestrian advisory committee meeting on March 13th. Those are held quarterly, so it's a little bit different than sometimes our normal schedule on here. A couple updates from other updates. Killeen-Temple, I shared this last time, but we were undergoing an audit. We did get the final report back. There were some recommendations that we're implementing from TechScott, but nothing super major. Overall, I think they were happy with us. The project call, I sent out an email. We're still waiting on a couple things. One last thing with the objective scoring, and then we received some subjective scores back, but not all. So we're following up with entities we haven't received scores back from. I hope the plan is to have final scores to show at the March TAC meeting, barring any other blockades that we run up against. And then second last thing, I want to note some administrative amendments that these have already been made, but we shared them with Policy Board and kind of talked about them at TAC last month. We're switching to projects, Whole Country's Microtransit Technology Project with the Rancier Ave Sidewalk Project, switching those let years because of project readiness. And then the Williams Road Sidewalk, we received a request from TechStop and the Village of Salado to move that let date back to FY 2025. Those have already been made, and we're moving forward with implementing those. Before I get to air quality, I have one other thing that wasn't in the packet, but Transpod. I gave an update last time about our meetings with Transpod. Uriah had some elected officials approach him asking about letters of support, if that would be helpful, and I reached out to Transpod and they said that would be. So they sent us a draft of what they've received from other places, but wanted to let the TAC know that we'll be reaching out with some drafts for elected officials to sign and send over to Transpod. Hopefully that will help our case with potentially bringing a touch track to the region. And then lastly, air quality for the month of January was 50 parts per billion in Killeen and 45 in Temple. That is all I have for staff updates. Any questions? All right, we'll move on to item number 4, which is regarding approval of the meeting minutes from January 10, 2024 meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Jason, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Item number 5 is a discussion and action item regarding recommending approval of resolution 2024-02 supporting the 2024 transit asset management performance targets established by Hill Country Transit District. If you've been around, this item and the next item are ones that we bring up yearly. And Daryl and his team, they they have a plan for tracking management of their assets, and they have benchmark ratings for those. They have a slide here with what their targets are and what the report is from the last year. I'll let you speak
Yeah,
to
let me
anything.
touch on the main thing. First of all, this is a very established protocol, the Transit Asset Management Plan. But if you'll notice on the right side, what our categorical targets are for rolling stock and maintenance equipment and buildings. You can see that we are way over on rolling stock and also on maintenance. So what that's really measuring is how many of our vehicles or how much of our equipment is past its useful life. And we have purposely held on to all that. Typically, we do auctions every couple of years to offload our very old vehicles, and then we replace them with new. We've not had by design, we've not had an auction since before COVID. We did that on purpose because of the supply chain issues that came about with vehicles. We typically, TxDOT doesn't like us doing that. I did send them a letter, though, stating that we were going to utilize our older vehicles for spare parts, only good spare parts that were still in useful working order. So that's what we did, but the downside of that is it throws our numbers way off. We are scheduled to have the first auction in 4 years, I think. It'll happen before May of this year. So we will offload a lot of those vehicles. We are also in the process of buying new vehicles, so that will bring this number back down into our target is less than 30%. So we will definitely be right at or below 30% after we finish the auction and purchase these new vehicles. So that's the basics of that.
Thanks, Daryl. There is a resolution in your packet, and I'll just note that in the now therefore be it resolved clause, it says 2023, should say 2024, so we'll make that edit before policy board approves next week.
Daryl, I've got a question on that. As you're moving to the microtransit, you're buying new vehicles, is that an add category?
It does in our NTD reporting. So in NTD, it has fixed route service and then on demand, and then there's also other. So we will just add the smaller microtransit vehicles into that.
So those will be in the beginning.
Exactly.
Since you're taking some of the fixed route off because you're moving the microtransit, will that change these numbers because there'll be only a certain amount of vehicles in service?
Yeah.
The way I'm asking is, are the vehicles that you've parked for cannibalization, are they counted in this number?
They are counted in.
Okay.
This. So that's why our numbers are officially high right now.
Okay.
We just haven't gotten rid of them. So when we get rid of them, those numbers will come off. The new vehicles will go on. What's going on the fixed route, when we kick off microtransit in May, possibly early June, but probably May, we're pulling back on our fixed route service also by design. We're going all in on the microtransit service because of the way it feeds us analytics. So after we receive, 2, 3, 4 months worth of analytical data, we will consider putting the fixed routes back in service, but we will probably shift their locations a little bit based on what the analytics tell us. And we're not anticipating, right now we have 10 fixed routes. I'm not anticipating putting 10 back out. It'll probably be more along the lines of 4 or 5, but it also in slightly different locations. So did that answer the question?
Any other questions for Daryl or comments on the resolution? Not a motion.
Move to approve.
Thanks, Bobby.
Second.
Thanks, Daryl. A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Item number 6 is a discussion and action item regarding recommending approval of resolution 2024-03, supporting the 2024 Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan performance targets established by Hill Country Transit District. This is a similar one, but a newer one and more focused on the safety side of things. And I think, Daryl, you told me that there's been no major updates since last year when we approved this resolution.
Yeah. By the way, we call this PTASP for short, rather than that big mouthful you just said. The PTASP is a fairly recent federal requirement from FTA. I think it went into effect at least two, maybe 3 years ago. Basically, it involves really a little bit of a closer look at safety across the board. We actually have a PTASP committee that we meet on a monthly basis. We review every incident, every accident. We also have an ARC, an accident review committee for actual accidents. But we go into tons of review detail, even just on small incidents. So anything that affects risk, this is a risk management tool. So we cover that very, very thoroughly. I was just in Tulsa this past week at a conference, a SWATA conference, and they went over PTASP and any slight adjustments in the rules. And we're still very much in compliance with all of that and proceeding well with it. It's actually a really good program. We like it.
Thanks, Daryl. Well, as you can see here, and this is also in the resolution, there's some performance targets for fixed route and response. And even though there's no new updates, we want to keep these two resolutions together since I think y'all were ahead of the game kind of with this plan, and so you'll be getting into a regular annual rhythm of approving new targets potentially.
Right. The targets are not, the baseline and the targets are really not that far apart, and we really think that we're probably in the correct zone in terms of what the targets will be adjusted to probably next year. They're right in the correct ballpark of where we need to be, I think.
Any other questions or comments?
Judge Miller has a question. We're going to put him on the screen in a moment.
Go ahead, Judge.
Daryl, I was just curious. It looks like right now this is historical, fixed route and on demand as far as the PTASP. Will there be any modifications or updates to how this is tracked as the transit district moves towards the micro transit model?
No, it won't be tracked any differently. That's mandated by how we do it. We will, once we start getting some analytical data back from the microtransit services, we'll go through all of these goals and just kind of revisit them in terms of are they still accurate? But I think they're going to be. I think there's a big difference between fixed route service and microtransit, which is just another form of on-demand service. But I think you're not going to see any major changes at all in any of that, especially in the tracking. It'll be exactly the same.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else? Not, do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thanks, Bobby.
Second.
Thank you, Jason. A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? All right, thank you, everybody. We'll move on to item number 7, which is regarding recommending approval of the 2023 Public Engagement Plan update. This is something that we shared a couple times, but staff has been working on a major update to our, what was previously called the Public Participation Plan. It was first written in 2007. It's been amended, no major amendments, but some minor amendments over the past 15 years, more than 15 years. There's a summary there of some significant changes. I believe the final draft document was also sent out with the meeting materials. Just a little summary of the public comment period that we had. There was a 45-day comment period. Staff went to 3 different events, the Polar Bear 5K in Pledge Copper's Cove, an event at the Harker Heights Public Library, and then one here at the office, as well as a couple other community events that weren't scheduled, but staff attended. And I'll shout out Anita here because she worked really hard on this project, and Kendra, also on our staff. There was a survey that they developed called Transportation Bingo to get comments, and it was fairly successful. There's, in the PEP that was sent out, there's a summary of all the comments and what staff did, if you wanted to read more in Appendix E. All the comments were positive. There were some suggestions that staff did incorporate, some from Jason, which appreciate your comments, reading those. Here's where we're at in the schedule. The comment period closed on February 1st, and unless there are any other changes, recommendations, or the motion today would be to consider recommend approval of the plan update for a policy board to consider.
Next question.
Yes.
Did staff participate in the polar bear plunge?
I don't think so. I wasn't there.
We stood as far away from that pool as possible, but we didn't watch it. It was very cold, but it was fun to watch.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah, and just to note, I think, this plan it was in need of a major update, and I think it's going to help us in our public engagement efforts going forward. And there's a whole section about reporting and staff trying to continually look at how we're doing and analyze how we're doing and see what works and what doesn't work. So I know Judge Miller's favorite part is public comments at the end. Hopefully this plan will get more public comments to report on at the end of our meetings.
I want to say thank you to Anita for following up on the comments. That's been a great conversation, just understanding, where you guys are at, coming up with changes to the plan. So even as a TAC member, being part of that process.
Thanks for reading it, Jason. It's an intense read.
Well, if there are no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the approval of the 2023 public engagement.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Andrew. A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Item number 8 is discussion and action item regarding initiation of public involvement for amendments to the FY 23 to 26 Transportation Improvement Program and the 2045 MTP. There's a whole bunch of projects. I won't read them for the action, but I'll touch on them here in the next slide. Just a refresher, we always share this, but the TIP is our short range plan that is includes funding for projects that are going to be let within the next 4 years. The MTP is our long range plan, covers 25 years. Here's the list of projects that we're proposing. All of them are being proposed to add to the MTP, and the first 5 will be also added to the TIP. Those first 4 are all projects that were selected during the TxDOT statewide transportation alternatives call. And then that 5th one is a NEVI project, which is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Act or something like that. It's to put 4 direct fast chargers in Killeen because it's in the MPO region. We have a request to add that to our TIP. The last 2 are projects that are not currently in the MTP. Bell County requested those to be added because they have submitted them to Congressman Carter's office for consideration of federal funding, and they need to be in our MTP.
I have a question. So the one in Killeen, looks like that's at the HCTD, so it's our private facility.
Yes.
So is it more of a program that's supporting the private sector, or it's really the first I've heard about this one?
We received I think in January, we received the email request to add this to our TIP. The NEVI program I don't know which department, but it's a textile administrative program. And the funding breakdown, I believe, is 50% federal and 50% private.
Okay. So the Sprint's more of a private endeavor, so it's.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and with all of these projects, there's no fiscal impact on NPO funds. The statewide, the 4 TA projects, those are being funded with federal dollars and covered, I think maybe some state dollars too. Potentially, the same with the NEVI project, and then the other 2, there's no funding attached to them right now. They're just being added to the plan, so they can be considered and be more competitive. In your packet, there is the tip sheets for those 5 projects that are being added to the tip that you can review. And here is the proposed schedule. Today would be considering recommending initiation of public involvement. Next week would be policy board initiating public involvement. We have a 15-day public comment period with 1 public hearing. The time and location is to be determined right now. And then in March, we bring this back for approval. And these projects would all be added, or the 5 tip projects would be added in the May quarterly revision to the statewide tip. That's all I have. Are there any other questions?
And what's the financial impact to the tip?
No financial impact. Yeah. All right. If there are no other questions, we can entertain a motion to approve. Thanks, Bob. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Bobby. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 9 is a discussion item regarding the development of the FY25 to 28 Transportation Improvement Program. We just talked about the 23 to 26 TIP. Every 2 years, we're required to develop a new 4-year TIP that covers the next 4 years. Which would be FY25 to 28. As part of this development, normally we add new projects into the TIP because there's 2 new funding years. This year, since our project scoring is taking a little bit of delay, the timing doesn't quite match up for our funding scenarios and prioritization, all that process to be finished before we have to approve our TIP. They'll likely both be done around May timeframe, but that doesn't allow for public involvement. So I have a few options for how we can go about developing this new TIP. The draft TIP was sent out with the meeting materials. This slide here is just a little summary of the estimated funding amounts. That first row is what is currently in the FY, what we have in the bank basically for FY24 that will be carried over. Some of that may go down if we have some projects led in later this year. That second budgeted row is the amounts forecasted for fiscal years 25 to 28 in the UTP. And then that programmed amount is projects we currently have programmed in FY '25 and '26. So the available amount is what we would need to program to be at 100% for categories 279 and 10 CR. The category 2 amount's probably not correct. I know Victor has sent over emails to us with some suggestions for where to put those funds, but the category 7 and 9 are where we wanted to focus today. So like I said, the project call, we're not gonna have it finished in time to incorporate it into the draft tip. Since we have to submit the tip for approval by June 18th. Staff was talking about some options, and these 3 are what we came up with. First one would be we could add projects from the currently approved MPP based on that available funding, and then replace those projects later this year when we can revise the STIP. That will be in November likely. The second option would be to not program any projects during initial development and add them in the first quarterly revision. And then the third, there was a FY '24-27 funding scenario that was approved by policy board last spring. There's some projects that could be added to the tip for now. And I'll show those in a minute. Before I move on, Victor, did you want to say anything about these options, just from Texas perspective?
Sure. So we've been reaching out to MPO staff. TPP division has requested all of the MPOs to have all of their 100% of their CAT $7 within the 25 through 28 STIP program to some projects. They don't want funds just sitting out there. And I know we were waiting for the project call to see if it get finished, so we would know, we'd have an idea which projects to put those CAT $7 on. And it looks like as far as the project call and what we need on our side of Text.Connect, our internal programming document, I think those dates line up where we can actually get the funds put on the projects that actually come to the top during the project call. However, like James said, we're not going to have it in time to meet the new tip development. And because it is a lot of work to bring projects in and out of the tip and STIP, I would probably recommend option 2, just wait until we actually have the projects that we know are going to go into the tip and they're based on the project call. But we'll get what we need as far as the project call. We can meet our deadline by the end of May for our Text.Connect program. So that's my 2 cents. And then as far as the CAT $2, that is an incorrect amount. I think you showed an available 54 million.
Yeah.
So we just let the State Loop 363 project where we had an authorized amount of, I think it was 83 million. That included our engineer's estimate of 62-ish million, plus a certain percentage for inflation, but we got a really good bid on that project. The bid came in, I believe it was 52 or 54 million, so that's an additional 30 million in CAT 2 that's going to go back to the available balance there. So we're getting closer to 80 million up there for the program. So it's good news. Anytime we let a project earlier, you'll usually get save some money on that.
Thanks, Victor. I'll keep going here, but if anyone has questions, you can stop me.
I do have one.
Go ahead, Jason.
And I've seen enough of our projects that we got a really good bid, and then here comes change order 1 through 12.
Right.
Would it be prudent to maybe not program some of that CAT 2 in anticipation that there might be some change orders?
Absolutely. Maybe just keep kind of a bank balance, $2 million, maybe 3, 4, 5 million, something just off to the side.
All right, first, I just want to show this. This is the funding scenario that was approved last spring. There's 5 projects on there. The top 3 are roadway, and the bottom 2 are livability. I know with our new project call, I'm not sure if all of these carried over. These were approved by policy board, so the idea was they could slot into our tip. There is available funding in 27 and 28 for these projects. That being said, I know we just had a new project call, so we don't have to go this route if the TAC and policy board don't want to go this route. These next couple slides, these are the projects that are currently in our MTP that would be next up for funding prior to the reprioritization or the new project listing that'll be finalized later this spring. There's some overlap with the two of the Coppers Cove projects that were in that previous slide are also on this slide. And then this one is the livability, and all this information is also in the packet. I know it's kind of small up there. Again, the purpose of this is not to say staff doesn't have any recommendations at this point, just want to provide all the options and information, and then we can have a discussion about how to proceed. And then these next few slides are just what's currently in the TIP. There's some 2 Cat 2 projects here, the bypass and off-ramp, and there's actually one missing because we added the Lucius McKelvey and industrial Loop 363 project. Cat 7 here, Chaparral, Warriors Path, Royal Street, 6th Avenue, and the Hill Country project. And then 9 and 10. Before I open it for discussion, this is kind of a draft schedule. This week and next week will be review of the TIP. Next month in March, we consider initiation of public involvement. It is a 30-day public comment period with 2 public hearings. And then we'd approve in May. And I'm thinking that the timing of approval of the draft TIP will probably align with approval of the funding scenarios and the new project listing for the MTP. Both will happen in May, and then we are required to submit the TIP by June 18. That's subject to change. I will go back to these first couple slides because I think that's probably where discussion will center around.
So I'm gonna agree with what TechStop's recommendation is, because go through these projects. I saw a couple that were percolating that are currently not on our work plan, and just simply putting them in a funding source where we can't get on them. It locks in funds that could be used elsewhere, and we end up having to change them. And if we go ahead and approve, make changes now, knowing that we're gonna have to go and do the same work again in a couple months, I'd rather just do it once. So go with what we have, then once we know what the call for projects comes, then we can have a TIP that really matches with what projects are being worked on, which needs funding right away, and proceed, accordingly.
The one thing Temple has going, if you could go to the slide that showed the railroad trail. When we did the TA application, we went through and right back there, revised the scope and the budget for that one, and it's a larger number than what you've got there. But the other thing that we've got going, and Brenton, I think we'd want to sit down after and talk about phase 1. There's another city project that's going to hinge on the timing of the first phase of the trail. And I think there's some questions I had about that Cat 10. And maybe we need to talk about if the Cat 10 stays on phase 1 of the trail, or does it pick up some Cat 7 in the next fiscal year? Does that free up the Cat 7 from this year? I don't know if there's an opportunity there or not. That's the only thing that just makes me think about if we're putting stuff in the TIP, if we're moving let years around, is there an opportunity as we shuffle all these moving pieces? And I bring it up, I don't know what the answer is.
Trying to concur, because I've got obviously 2 projects that don't even represent the TIP, what the current scope budgets are, check around and say.
Yeah. So it may be, if I'm not ready to, make a decision to go one way or the other, it sounds like the answer is don't program right now. keep going on with it. Don't do the work that we're going to have to change it 6 months from now.
Great, thanks. Any other thoughts? Sounds like the consensus is we'll finish the funding, the scoring process and approve a funding scenario in May, which will satisfy TxDOT and be able to get projects in UTP or into TxDOT Connect, and then later this summer or early fall, based on that approved funding scenario, we can add projects to the TIP for the November revision. Everyone's okay with not utilizing this approved funding scenario? There's projects on here. For those that have projects on here, I guess this affects Cove, Bellman, Temple, and Killeen mostly.
As long as we have the most accurate numbers, I think, the estimated costs, I think that we're good.
Again, I think, like I said, the one thing on Featherline, we're not even working on that at all. So having it show 27, that we've got other priorities.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know.
So that could be decided and put back on.
I would say something with this, since this was an approved scenario, when we, in April, May, when we're having discussions, we could share this, and depending on how the new scoring shakes out, we could share this scenario or just have it as reference, or these projects are in the TIP, or like the West Avenue Phase 1, the Business Use 190 Phase 2B, Railroad Phase 2. Commerce one might be, Bob, I can't remember if that one's in the TIP or not, but if this was a decision that was made before, I don't want to just, we're ignoring that decision because we have new projects and we want to focus on those. I think we should consider these at least for it when we have the scenario discussions for funding as a component, but that's my thought as staff.
No, I
I'm
agree.
not sure what we're doing. I'm not quite sure what we're doing. And I hear what the agenda item says. I heard that you have some scheduling issues. So I'm not quite sure what the conversation is about.
I think we currently have $30 million of Cat 7 and $5.5 million of Cat 9. Those are subject to change, but that's what we're estimating of unprogrammed. And TxDOT doesn't, the Transportation Planning Programming Division, they want MPOs to be programming these dollars because they don't want balances carrying over, and I know it takes a lot of time. So normally when we do a TIP development, by this time we'll have an approved project listing, and we'll have the discussion is centered on, okay, we have $30 million, we'll have some funding scenarios. How do we want to program these funds with the projects that we have so we can get them in the TIP? I think because of the timeline issues, staff doesn't have funding scenarios, but we also want to give some options for how this draft TIP could be, and the initial development of the TIP could be done. Do we program funding now? Do we wait until later and then program projects? That's sort of the conversation, if that helps a little bit, Bob. I think the consensus right now is to not program projects in the TIP. They will go in for TxDOT. We'll let them know what projects we're planning to program basically in May.
When you say tip at the 25, 28?
Correct. I think from a staff's perspective, we want the TAC and Policy Board to know, hey, we have funding available, and right now, what we have is will be underprogrammed in our draft tip. It will look like we're not using all of our funds. And everyone to be on the same page that we have a plan to use those funds, and we can explain that if we get asked questions. Not Victor, because Victor's here knowing this, but if down in Austin, they have questions or are concerned because it doesn't look like we're using all of our funds. That's the biggest potential concern with submitting a tip that's not fully programmed.
It's the timing that the MTP project scoring lines up with having to get the draft tip. I mean, to me, that's the answer. We're scoring projects. Which I think you all had planned that the project scoring was going to happen sooner. It would have been done.
Yeah.
Closer to the timing of the draft.
Yeah.
That just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I don't think that TPP is so concerned about the tip. I'm looking at them to make sure. I think they're more concerned about TxDOT Connect program. And we could meet the deadline that TPP wants for TxDOT Connect based on the project volume. So we'll be good at that. It's just you'll have to do a November revision to get those projects in.
They want to know we have a plan. So I think that's what this conversation is about, is that we have a plan for how to use this 30 million of Cat 7 and 5.5 million of Cat 9. We have a plan for how we're going to get those dollars allocated to projects.
So the allocation process, at this juncture of the conversation, would be from the call project that we just submitted. Or some that rank fairly good in the existing tip, or the MTP.
Yeah, so the process we have for adding projects to the tip is they have to be in the MTP. So we could, right now, all we can do is use the current MTP. But since we know we have these new projects coming in, and there's gonna be a new list, and that's where the whole timeline issue has been discussed, is do we wait or not?
You probably said this, but what's the time frame on the MTP?
The full plan update? Great question. I think the original target was May, where it'll be done, if not May, June, July, August, sometime this summer the plan will be updated, but the project listing will be done in May, is the idea right now. And then we'll just add that into the final plan.
So we'll be feeding the 25, 28 tip from the current MTP.
Yes, from the new project listing. That's the consensus I'm hearing from everybody right now.
Very good, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, this is just a discussion item, so if and we'll share this feedback with Pulse Board next week and kind of let them know what the plan is, unless we can move on unless there are any other comments or questions. Thanks everybody for that feedback. The next item is item number 10, discussion item regarding presentation from Killeen-Temple on the Waco District's ITS master plan. We have Tom Fowler here. Yeah. Speaking presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Fowler. I'm with Killeen-Temple Associates. Killeen-Temple is under contract to the TxDOT Waco District to develop what's called an Intelligent Transportation System Master Plan. This plan is looking at district-wide, how the district can deploy and use intelligent transportation systems, both things in the field as well as some operational improvements like a traffic management center in consideration of a freeway safety service patrol. So we are about 2/3 of the way through the plan and just wanted to provide the TAC with an update of some of the things that we're looking at and we'll be recommending in this plan. So generally, we're essentially creating a roadmap for how we want to deploy, operate, and maintain ITS within the district. One thing I just wanted to note, this is not a funded plan, so the idea is we're trying to look at long-term, what are the things we would like to have throughout the district. And so as TxDOT moves forward, either with funding or with future construction projects, if they know that This is an area where they would like to have a fiber optic line, where they would like to have future cameras or other infrastructure. They can try to integrate some of that into the projects, as well as maybe focus on deploying some high priority infrastructure that we think would help improve operations. Couple of the key things in the plan, we did a needs assessment. We have a list of prioritized devices and locations, including things like cameras, dynamic message signs, improved weather information systems. We looked at truck parking availability signage up and down 35. We looked at wrong way driving detection, freeway safety, service patrol, and then looked at deploying some communications, and then had some discussion and a plan for putting together a traffic management center that would help us utilize this equipment to optimize it and improve operations. So in terms of needs assessment, we spent a lot of time, we worked closely with district leadership, met with them several times, including the district engineer, also spent time with all the area engineers, and then did meet with some of the agencies here in the K-Temple area. We met with the TxDOT, the Belton area office, met with K-Temple, met with the City Clean and City of Temple, as well as Fort Cavazos. And we met with those two cities because they currently maintain their own traffic signals, and so TxDOT wanted to talk a little bit more about sharing information and operating the system and how to coordinate for things like major incidents. Some of the things, I won't go through this, I know this is a bit hard to see, but we put together a needs assessment. We looked at general traffic management. We looked at things like traffic incidents, weather, different types of needs that we heard. Some of the key things, we looked at both what TxDOT was identifying as key needs and what their partner agencies, the cities, the MPOs, the Fort had talked about. Key things we are hearing from other agencies included the need for good travel information and accurate travel information, particularly in advance of construction, weather, or incident, the need to share and provide live video feeds, and just the overall need for interoperability among systems and being able to share information as TxDOT continues to deploy ITS and work with the cities and other agencies. We then kind of took that information and in working with TxDOT began to lay out what we think the system should look like, and this is looking out roughly 10 years or so into the future. This chart shows what's existing right now within the overall TxDOT Waco district, so not just the K-Temple area, and then what we're looking at is for future build out. So quadrupling, almost going quadrupling the number of CCTV cameras, about doubling the number of dynamic message signs. You may be familiar with, there's comparative travel time signs and travel delay signs out on 35 right now. We want to looking at adding any additional ones. TxDOT's been moving more and more to full color dynamic message signs, which allows you to replicate signs like you might see with those comparative travel time signs. So the idea was, if we're looking at dynamic message signs, we can put in comparative travel information, but we can also use those for other types of information to provide more flexibility, and the cost of those is coming down. We're looking at adding additional road weather information systems, and parking availability signs, and we did look at wrong way driving. I'll talk about that. We are not currently recommending any wrong way driving detection or warning systems, and I'll mention why in just a minute. But I did want to go through and just kind of highlight a little bit about some of these deployments, looking specifically within the K-Temple area. So I realize it's a little tough to see. We're happy to share these if anybody wants to look at these in more detail. But what you see, these are the current CCTV camera deployment system out there. If it's green, it's existing. If it's blue, it's something TxDOT is already planning to deploy. The red, the orange, and the yellow are things that we're looking at recommending. Red is high priority. So with the camera system, TxDOT has what they call a gap plan, where they've identified the need for, they want to have a minimum coverage on all their tier 1 roadways of cameras. So tier 1 roadways in this area would be I-14 and I-35. TxDOT currently meets that gap plan requirements, but they wanted to have a more dense coverage. So they were looking to have about 1 mile spacings of cameras in urban areas. So I-35 through Temple, I-14 through the Clean area into Copper's Cove. We wanted to space cameras out at about 1 mile. So we're adding quite a bit of cameras. And then we also looked at adding future cameras on some of the state routes outside of the interstate, particularly in areas where we've seen flooding, where we've seen high accidents or a high number of crashes, or other types of operational concerns. So First priority is adding additional cameras onto I-35 and I-14, and then to add additional cameras on other key routes in the area. We looked at dynamic message signs. Generally, I think along I-35, TxDOT met that, or the Waco district met that current gap plan that the state has as a whole. And generally, we felt like there was good coverage of dynamic message signs on 35, but we are recommending 2 additional dynamic message signs on I-14, including one that's actually outside of the TxDOT district in Copper's Cove, but they wanted to be able to provide travel information for people coming into the region as you get onto 190. And then a few dynamic message signs outside of the interstates to try to, again, provide additional travel information and key decision points. Road weather information systems, I think within the Killeen-Temple area, we had 5 that were recommended. We generally looked at these in areas where we saw flooding, where TxDOT was concerned about icing conditions, or both. So a little bit on 14 and 35, as well as a couple of state routes to provide just more information. And we're trying to cover the district as a whole, so we would have things out on the western side, the eastern side of the district, just so TxDOT would also have a better picture if fronts are moving into the area, kind of what's coming before it gets to this area. The truck parking systems, we understand that there's certainly concern. There's 2 within the Killeen-Temple area. There is the parking areas the trucks can use south of Temple. Those are often filled up. We wanted to at least provide some advance notice to trucks as they enter into the region, either from the north or south, about the availability of both that lot south of Temple as well as the lot that's north of Waco. So the idea would be we would detect the amount of trucks there, let people know in advance, and ultimately TxDOT wants to increase the number of parking spots at those locations, but we want to at least provide some people advanced information about what's going on and what's available there. Wrong way driving, I mentioned that. This is kind of looking at the district as a whole. What we were generally seeing, and as we talked to the different cities and MPOs and asking about wrong way driving, generally it was not identified as a problem or any specific areas where we have wrong way driving issues. So we saw some wrong way driving crashes spread throughout the district. Not that many on the interstates. One of the concerns there is we don't know what we don't know. So if someone is on a wrong way driving and they get in a crash, we know that. But if they get on the interstate and they turn themselves around, we don't know that. So that's one issue. So we may eventually look at some detection systems just to make sure that there's not an issue. But right now, from the crash standpoint, we didn't see it as an issue. We are in the plan recommending that TxDOT continue to monitor that. And if we do see an issue come up, that we look at deploying those detection and warning systems. But right now, it didn't seem to be as much of a concern. Freeway Safety Service Patrol. This is something that we're working closely with TxDOT's Traffic Safety Division out of Austin. They've expressed a desire to try to cover 35. Right now in San Antonio and Austin and in Dallas and Fort Worth, they operate Freeway Safety Service Patrols. They're revolving vehicles that move around and can provide assistance to motorists if they run out of gas, if they need a flat tire change, but also can help manage incidents and provide advanced warnings. So we see a key safety benefit to those, helping people get off the road and helping to manage incidents. We did a benefit cost analysis. We saw the highest benefit, and this is looking at things like truck traffic, overall congestion, and the number of crashes, particularly serious and fatal crashes where we may have an interstate fully closed for a period of time. The highest benefit we saw was 35 through the Waco area. The second highest benefit area was I-35 through Temple, as well as 14 here in this district. So both of those had a very positive benefit cost ratio, and we saw advantages. So that is a recommendation and something TxDOT is considering to try to fill that gap in right now for someone traveling between Austin and Dallas and Fort Worth, where currently there's no safety service patrol, but we would like to eventually have something like that. And I think lastly, we looked at communications. TxDOT is trying to cover all Tier 1 roadways with fiber. We currently have that on 14, but we're looking to try to fully deploy out the fiber system on both 35 and 14, and eventually put it on a few other roadways where we may have additional cameras like 281 in the future. So I think The one other area that I just wanted to touch on that we're looking closely at is a traffic management center, and working with TxDOT to try to identify what is the right concept to help manage these devices and improve operations within the district. So for the TMC, a couple of things that we were looking at, should we have a centralized system, something based out of the Waco or the Waco district office in Waco? Do we want to have more of a virtual traffic management center or some type of hybrid? And generally, I think we're landing on hybrid of having a center within the Waco district, but making all of that information available so anyone at TxDOT within the area offices can access cameras, can control everything, and can act as sort of a virtual TMC. We looked at a satellite and we talked about adding a second TMC in the Belton area office. We talked to agencies about potentially co-locating a traffic management center with cities, and we looked at just overall operational capability and staffing. And generally, like I said, we are looking right now, TxDOT has additional space in their signal shop in the Waco district. So the idea is we're going to build that out first as a small traffic management center. And the key focus with that will be just trying to add staff and capabilities to better manage the cameras and dynamic message signs and weather and share information. So that's sort of the bigger focus, is just utilizing this technology to the best that we can, and then eventually try to increase staff and then possibly look at adding a satellite TMC in the Belton area office. The city of Waco indicated an interest in potentially co-locating, so we're keeping that in mind and potentially doing that in the future. We did talk to Temple and Killeen, and both those cities indicated a strong desire to share information and better operate the system and coordinate closely with TxDOT, but not to actually be in the same facility, which we think made a lot of sense, and we'll continue to focus on how do we better share information as TxDOT gets additional camera coverage and other information about what's going on. Make sure we're trying to share that with those cities, do that to the best we possibly can. And just in terms of the plan itself, we are looking at putting a draft together over in the springtime. In May, we'll have a follow-up and final meeting with the district leadership, and then look at finalizing that in June. And we're happy to share that draft once we have that ready around the March, April timeframe with anyone that would like to take a look at that and see a little bit closer at what we're recommending. And just wanted to add some additional contact information. Colton Smith from the district is leading the project, as well as our project team. So any of us would be happy to answer questions or share any additional information with the TAC if you would like more information. I think with that, James, we've wrapped up. If there's questions, we're happy to address those.
Questions? I guess from the MPO, is there anything we can do to support, the plan or implementation of the plan? I know it's TxDOT's plan, but if there's anything we can do to support, let us know. Or
Okay.
if you know anything right now.
Yeah, we really appreciate y'all taking the time, and I know Temple, some of the cities participated in it, taking the time to provide input. Once we have the draft ready, we would love to share that, and if y'all want to provide additional feedback into it, and what you think, in terms of how we prioritize things and how we may operate things in the future, really would certainly welcome that input.
I think our interest is going to be, once you pass the high level down to let's start operating this thing, is if you go with the Belton satellite office, then how does that satellite office interface with city public works, city police, fire, because any incident response is going to come down to the cities as well, maybe sheriff's department. I think the actual operations is, I'm more interested.
Okay.
But I know we're not there yet.
I know we wanted to be able to provide full motion video to the cities, and then if we have a TMC operations, be able to alert and work closely with the cities anytime there's an incident, construction closures coming up, that type of information. So absolutely.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, well, thank you all very much.
All right, we'll keep on here. Item number 11, discussion item regarding update on the MTP steering committee. We did have a meeting last month after the policy board, and we have another meeting scheduled next week after policy board. I know several of y'all here were a part of that steering committee. Staff has been doing some research on the objectives, kind of vision statements, goals, guiding principles that other NPOs around the country use for their plan development. There was a consensus from the group was that ours could be in need of update or like could be more forward thinking. So we'll be presenting that next week. And it's kind of the biggest thing that we want the steering committee to look at. But after we had that discussion, there may be more thoughts about reviewing specific sections of the document, which staff are in the process of updating the language and the information in the plan itself. That's the update I have on the steering committee. Item number 12 is a discussion item regarding an update on the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. Been having regular safety task force meetings for the last 3 months. There's tomorrow maybe last week was the
Thursday.
Last week was the February meeting, and those have been good. The only other update, major update I wanted to share is in your packet, there's a draft resolution. This is the policy commitment part of the safety action plan. It's similar, it's sort of similar to the safety target resolution we were talking about last month, but it's a little bit different, and wanted to share that with the TAC. We'll be sharing with the policy board for discussion only. If there are comments or you do that and have comments, please share them. I'll send it out.
Made it in the printed packet.
It's possible that it didn't make it in the, we can send it out in the follow-up email. It's nothing super specific, but it does have language about a goal of reducing fatalities by a certain percentage with an eventual goal of getting to 0, but it doesn't set a time frame for that.
Because that, remember when we were discussing the MTP, when we set our safety targets, then we did kind of overlap that.
Yeah.
But we did put a timeline on ourselves.
Yeah, and I think last month when we were talking about it, the discussion was we could adjust next year's targets to match the language of this, but this is just a draft. We're open for feedback, wanting feedback on the resolution. That's all I had on the SS4A grant. Next item is regarding item number 13, regarding an update on the possible MPO boundary expansion. We still do not have any updates on this. Ryan didn't share anything with me, so we'll bring this back again next month. Item 14 is discussion item regarding the April 8th, 2024 solar eclipse event. And we added this item in because there was a discussion last time, and I think Judge Miller was interested in having this as a space for cities to share what they're working on as the solar eclipse comes. If there's any discussion, or Judge Miller, if you want to chime in here. He's still on.
Yes, he's still on.
There doesn't have to be. Oh,
It's coming.
Just for grants, we're gonna send everything 35 up for you.
Good morning,
Yeah,
everyone. James, I appreciate you putting that slide in there. Just a little bit of overall regional. I did hear on any of those that you may listen to Waco 100 in the morning. Zach Owens had read off a number of the top 40 towns listed in the state of Texas for watching. In that list that he presented was Harker Heights, Killeen-Temple, Coppers Cove, Gatesville. I mean, all throughout our K-Tempo region, was listed as part of the top 40 sites within the state. So, so those of you that are doing your individual planning, keep in mind too that, the state and our media outlets are beginning to have, present more visibility, more publicizing this event, which may generate more interest in the region than what at least I had originally anticipated. So good luck to you all as you move forward. It's April 8th is going to be a heck of a day.
Thank you, Judge.
Yeah, I started seeing the number of school districts that just said there's going to be no class, schools closed that day. And then in the past for the cities, we don't necessarily announce whether we're going to be closed. We follow what the county does. So I don't know if the county's made a decision.
We're closed.
Are you going to be closed?
We're closed.
There you go.
Just law enforcement.
Essential personnel.
I know as far as the large buses go, we're not putting them on the road April 8th, which is a Monday. We are making arrangements for dialysis with the on-demand services. We're going to also keep those off the road as much as we can on Monday, but we're working with some of the clinics to do those dialysis events on Sunday, the day before. So.
I don't have anything to share, just create space. Thanks, everybody. Last item, number 15, regarding public input received through January 2024. In your packet, there's a slide here. There's a couple new emails that we received. Someone asking about the HOP, which I sent them information. I don't think I sent them to Daryl, but I sent them over to your website. Someone was asking about the Bell County Thoroughfare Plan that NPO helped develop a couple years ago. And then question about chain a bikes, which I don't have any information on. I think staff was doing some research, but if anybody knows about the legality of chaining bikes up to public trees, maybe that's city by city separate.
Yeah, and Anita messaged me and Gary McCabe, who's the chair of BPAC, he owns the subdivision bike. We started research yesterday. I'm not finding anything in our city ordinances or the Texas Transportation Code. But in some of the conversations we had, it may make a difference whether it's public light pole or public tree in the right of way, or it's a tree or light pole or some other fixture on private property, such as like Walmart or HEB. I found some policies like Texas A&M or SMU that said you're not supposed to chain your bike to the light poles. And if it's there at the end of the semester, it just became trash and we're taking it away. But then that's private property. So I'm not aware that there's a law against it, but you might run into some private property policies or rules that you don't follow. It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been contacted yet, but typically we'll have to look at our zoning, if it's abandoned for a certain amount of time, then we consider it there, and then it goes into more of that kind of action. But I'll have to see if we have anything specifically written in our codes. Kind of doubt it since most of them are in 64. So, things have changed, but, and I'm used to in other jurisdictions where some cities are where it's illegal to do that, or there's a time limit where they're allowed to, but after a certain amount of time, it goes over 90 days, it gets removed. So I'll do some vision. That's all right.
Item number 16, member comments. If there's anything else anyone would like to share? Not. It is 10:43 and this meeting's adjourned. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.